Hello, my name is Alex and I am the host of How Bizarre Podcast, and this is episode 17 of the series. Hopefully you'll like it and the show will make some traction in the time ahead. So, what is this podcast about? It's about storytelling and especially about stories that are obscure, unknown to the wider public, strange and sometimes inexplicable, content that somehow never got the attention it deserved. Stories that are forgotten in the mists of time regardless if they happened yesterday or some centuries ago. So if you are attracted to bizarre, shocking or just plainly weird stuff, I think you'll find this podcast very informative and perhaps even entertaining. This podcast is for mature audiences and listener discretion is advised. All that being said, now let us dive into the 17th episode of How Bizarre Podcast. This episode is called Cult Goes Atomic. What do a runaway sect and an atomic bomb have in common? Maybe more than one would think at first glance. If there is any description that underlines the term bizarre, it would be a cult. And not any old cult but Shinrikyo. One of the most creative sects in recent decades. The Japanese Shinrikyo was infamous for numerous murders and assaults, and of course their 5 minutes of glory. Culmination of years of hard work on the religious scene, deriving experience from dozens of crimes all around Japan. I am of course talking about the sarin nerve gas attack in the Tokyo subway in March of 1995 that took at least 13 lives and injured more than 6,500. Although not the only cult that dabbled in weapons of mass destruction, it was by far the most successful. Deployment of chemical weapons was successfully achieved. Use of biological agents failed due to cults' limited experience in the field of mass production of such weapons. Their several attempts at cultivating anthrax and plague cultures were a mixed bag, but their use as a weapon wasn't a success. Ohm's theology consisted of a toxic mix of Christian revelation, dubious early Buddhist interpretations, the unavoidable Shiva, and several passages by Nostradamus, all intertwined with the leader's charisma and of course, anticipation of the end of the world around the end of the millennium, in this case 1997. Cult's leader named Shoko Asahara was said to be somewhat charismatic, if we stretch the term charisma in order to include large, fat and bearded weirdos. However, the knowledge that they experimented with a nuclear option seems the most shocking and defies belief. Culmination of Ohm's activities coincided with the fall of Soviet Union and the societal transition of the successor countries. Thrown in poverty, both physical and mental, many people had fallen for the Ohm's fishing of souls. With everything being for sale in Russia at the time, the cult obtained a combat transport helicopter, blueprints for production of assault rifles, and most frightening of all, several scientists of whom some had limited experience within the field of nuclear power. Still, that was not enough to achieve anything resembling a nuclear weapon. Although it must be said, they tried hard. The mysterious seismic event when seismometers registered an earthquake as a result of an explosion in the Australian outback at the location of Bonjavarn Station on 28th of May, 1993, which would be equivalent to a .2 kiloton detonation, together with the testimonies of Aborigines and farmers about bright light witnessed around that time, makes a compelling case about this cult's nuclear ambitions. The sect tried to create a device that would place them in the nuclear club as the only non-governmental organization with nuclear potential in the world. After some time, Asahara decided that purchasing nuclear weapon from the ex-Soviet stockpiles was a more realistic option. They had the resources, the cult being 60,000 strong and $1 billion in funds. Still, buying an atomic bomb was out of their reach as Ukraine, Belarus and Kazakhstan made an agreement with Russia to surrender their nuclear arsenal or at least making it non-operational, using the core of warheads as fuel for nuclear power plants. Witnesses among the Australian Customs Service confirmed that the sect had procured protective suits, mechanization, laboratory equipment, mechanical diggers, chemicals and mysterious boxes with unknown contents declared as hydrochloric acid. It is confirmed that the sect, which had a huge fan base in Russia at the time, was trying to procure tactical nuclear weapons from the arsenal of the zombified Russian state. Luckily they found it difficult to buy and tentatively detonate such a weapon. But there are serious indications that lead to such conclusion that if they managed to get nuclear potential, they would have used it. Authorities did not react to the incident because the sect did not yet have the reputation it would gain from the Tokyo attack. This, coupled with strict freedom of religion laws in Japan, meant that the cult had enough space and time to try to bring the second coming of Christ. Christ, according to their quasi-theology, was embodied within their leader, Shoko Asahara, dangerous lunatic and mass killer. The sect sold the 200,000-hectare ranch shortly after. It was later revealed that among other devious activities, sectarians were mining uranium ore on the ranch. One would think that such a creative sect would quickly disappear from the scene after the Japanese authorities clashed with it in the death sentence of leader Shoko Asahara and 12 other cultists. Still, the sectarians are as busy as bees and have rebranded themselves under the new name Aleph, so they probably continue to dream of a new end of the world triggered by their atomic bomb, which would be the third detonated on Japanese soil. As of today, the cult surprisingly still exists in two factions numbering more than 2,000 members. Yet, the world can make a collective sigh of relief because the cult is nowadays branded as a terrorist organization by a dozen or so countries, and in Japan is being constantly monitored by the security apparatus. The execution of their 13 leaders by hanging a few years ago was Japanese society sending a clear message what awaits people with messianic complexes and enough money to start believing their own hubris. What could have happened if they managed to fulfill their goals is anyone's guess. Probably we could have witnessed a dangerous example of proof that non-state entities can and will produce weapons of mass destruction and open Pandora's box from where cults, corporations and wealthy individuals maniacally inclined would be encouraged to pursue devices that could kill thousands with a single deployment. I hope you all liked episode 17 of this podcast. Thank you so kindly for listening, and I will be back next time for episode 18 of How Bizarre Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, sharing, and above all, subscribe to this channel, dear listener. Because, why not? Join me next time for another bizarre adventure through space and time. Cheerio.